They fly over infinite oceans. They cross arid plains. And they swim without looking back. They defy the odds of survival. The path is long and dangerous, but there is no other choice. If nature stands against them, they will fight it. When the destination is a promised land, no obstacle can stand in the way. No matter the cost, they will not stop. They are the wild travelers of our planet, and these are their stories. Tanzania, southern Serengeti. Population 2 million wildebeests, for now. The wildebeest migration in the Serengeti is one of the most impressive wildlife spectacles. Known as the Great Migration, infinite herds of wildebeests converge on the grasslands in the southern Serengeti region. What used to be a pleasant place to graze and live a peaceful life, just as wildebeests are accustomed to, has turned into an inhospitable site where the challenges of survival become increasingly unbearable. As a result, millions of wildebeests embark on a journey of roughly 1,000 kilometers, driven by the promise of fresh grasses and abundant water in the Masai Mara in Kenya. But what seems like an impulsive trip with more uncertainty than sense is nothing of the sort. Wildebeests follow the rainy season in this region of the African continent. The same rains that create green grasslands full of life, with seemingly endless grass to eat. Of course, this trek is by no means free of challenges. Besides the almost endless plains ahead, seen from above, marching steadily, the wildebeests look like a living sea, imposing creatures of up to 275 kilograms. The ground's rumble is a sign that the herds are approaching, often crossing the vast plains in a line stretching to the horizon. However, what for some is a marvel of nature is for others an all-you-can-eat banquet. Predators are aware of the journey that these wild wildebeests have decided to undertake and lie in wait, ready for the buffet to begin. Aware that they will face countless predators on their way to their promised land, wildebeests march together in crowded groups. For them, strength lies in numbers. Often, in the face of such abundance of prey, predators like cheetahs and lions cannot settle on a clear target and end up going hungry. Nevertheless, a significant part of the Great Migration of wildebeests is that the whole family joins in, including calves only a few days old. As soon as they are born, there is no time to lose, and the youngsters must stand up to start the march. During this journey, calves usually stay close to their mothers, who do their best to be a safe haven in all the chaos. With so many herds together, births, rather than being astonishing, become routine, with up to 3,000 new wildebeests a day swelling the herd. Calves are generally the favorite targets of predators that see the herds as an almost unlimited source of meat. After all, why risk a blow from an adult when you can savor the tender meat of a calf? However, this is by no means an easy task. Among so many individuals, herd members typically look out for everyone, offering additional protection to the sick and the smallest. Naturally, given such a colossal march, wildebeests occasionally need to make technical stops to refuel on fresh grasses. Following the rains during this journey ensures them a good temporary food supply. Moreover, while feeding, they use their horns to dig in the ground, helping to renew the soil and preparing it for when the rains return. Of course, if the journey were strictly over land, it would be too simple for the majesty of this species. So Mother Nature has placed imposing river obstacles in their way, where wildebeests must leave the relative safety of the plain to face swift, powerful rivers. One such river is the Grumeti. When it's time to plunge into these raging waters, the current is not the only enemy. You never know when something that looks like a simple rock might actually be a ravenous crocodile rocking back and forth with its powerful jaws, During the season when traffic on the Grumeti's banks becomes more intense, its waters often run red with blood. As thousands of wildebeests die either by drowning or from ruthless crocodile attacks. The good news for the wildebeests that survive this ambush is that they can continue their journey. The bad news is that the Grumeti is not the only waterway they'll have to face to reach their destination. The Mara River is another checkpoint established by hungry crocodiles to satisfy their appetites. Sometimes, when the rains are abundant, the wildebeest's grueling march finds an early stopping point in the northern Serengeti plains, and they won't have to try their luck crossing the Mara River. However, when drought wins out, survivors of this endless herd must once again take the plunge, watching from so close yet so far, the verdant lands of the Masai Mara. Only those who outlast the merciless current and the armored crocodiles will get to enjoy all the abundance the rains have brought. Those who manage to overcome this final obstacle can savor one of the rainiest spots in this region of Africa, which for the next 3 months provides almost limitless food in this earthly Eden, where the wildebeests will stay. Of course, since nothing lasts forever, when the rains return, the herds make their way back to the southern Serengeti via the central Serenera region, where everything starts anew, and nature once again rewards us with this majestic spectacle. Maybe this time with new protagonists. While wildebeests press on toward the north in search of vast grasslands, another species spreads its wings and heads south to escape the harsh winter. Monarch butterflies are other wild travelers that cover thousands of kilometers, turning distances into mere numbers. It all begins east of the North American mountain range, where, by fall, monarch butterflies sense that the days are getting shorter, and the thermometer begins to gradually drop, while the small populations to the west of the range see California's coast as the perfect place to hibernate. The swarms on this side of the continental territory embark on an unprecedented feat. A 4,000-kilometer flight south to the thick Oyamel forests in central Mexico, where the climate is much more favorable. But let's not jump ahead, because it's still summer, and the monarch butterflies are laying their eggs on milkweed leaves. During the breeding season, each female can lay up to 500 eggs over 5 weeks. After about 5 days, the caterpillar emerges from the egg and must feed on milkweed to continue its delicate metamorphosis. In the pupa stage, what will soon be a glorious monarch butterfly is enclosed in a chrysalis. After 7 to 15 days, a beautiful adult butterfly with its characteristic orange and black wings emerges. It's simply the miracle of life. And best of all, just in time for the great migration that's about to begin. The monarch's journey is fraught with challenges, much like that of the impressive wildebeests. What the grass-filled plains are for wildebeests, so are the forests rich in a variety of flowers, like echinacea, blazing star, and goldenrod, for monarchs. From these, monarchs extract the delicious nectar that keeps them strong enough to face a journey of this magnitude. Seeing the monarch butterflies in their great migration is a wonder to behold. Sometimes it even seems they block out the sun when countless numbers rise in flight to flee the winter. While it's nearly impossible to determine their exact count, estimates place them in the millions. Of course, monarch butterflies have nothing to fear from dominant species along their route, such as jaguars or pumas, because these predators don't even look at them due to their small size. However, that doesn't mean the butterflies have no predators along such a long route over some of the world's most biodiverse regions. Hundreds of birds, toads, hedgehogs, and spiders, eager to fill their stomachs with these colorful lepidopterans, ambush them and succeed in devouring them. With so many monarchs gathered in one place, it's nearly impossible for all to escape their predators. On the monarch's travel schedule, daytime is the most active period, whereas at dusk, the butterflies look to roost in trees, forming clusters in safe spots to keep warm. It's a one-of-a-kind spectacle to see large forested areas go from a vivid green to being blanketed in a bright orange in seconds, when hundreds of thousands of monarch butterflies arrive. After months of intense flight, the monarch butterflies reach their longed-for destination in central Mexico. Here, the Mexican forests become the perfect home to protect them from the low temperatures up north, and to give them an ecosystem that seems like a paradise compared to where they came from at this time of year. Nature rewards the butterflies that make it to Mexico by granting them what, for them, is almost eternal life. The monarchs that reach the finish line are called the Methuselah generation, a nod to their longevity. While these can live up to 9 months in total, most other monarchs' lifespan is about 1 month. When winter comes to an end and early spring arrives, and after the great feat of crossing such tremendous latitudes, the monarch butterflies do the unthinkable and return to their original home in the north. Once there, following the cycle of life, they lay eggs, making way for new generations to continue one of the most impressive wild migrations on the planet. Unlike monarch butterflies that flee winter by tirelessly beating their wings toward the south, the immense shoals of sardines off the coast of South Africa see their salvation in the north as water temperatures drop. Measuring up to 7 kilometers long, 1.5 kilometers wide, and 30 meters deep, the sardine shoals pack billions of these fish into one spot. All these swimmers share the goal of escaping the cold temperatures of the Agulhas Bank and heading toward the northern coast of Mozambique, where a much more pleasant climate awaits. On this transoceanic journey, the sardines can cover an astonishing distance of up to 1,500 kilometers, not bad for a fish that measures no more than 20 centimeters. By the sheer number of migrants, the so-called sardine run, a term for this massive exodus, is the largest migration on Earth. Its scale is such that some even claim these gigantic shoals can be seen from space. And as could be expected, these endless schools of mineral-rich fish act like a magnet for various predator species, which see in them a virtually inexhaustible food source. In fact, it's the predator's presence that prompts the sardines to cluster together in massive shoals for protection. Similar to the wildebeest strategy, sardines also believe there is safety in numbers, grouping in these colossal shoals to confuse their voracious pursuers. While it might look like the sardines are conveniently clustering for their predators, in truth, this strategy gives them a much higher chance of survival. For starters, 1 million eyes see more than 2, so the shoals can detect potential threats like sharks and dolphins more quickly when they're eyed as prey. Plus, the density of the shoal itself makes it tougher for predators to get close. The list of predators targeting these shoals is perhaps as extensive as the shoals themselves. Among those seeking to fill their stomachs with thousands of sardines are whale sharks, striped marlin, sailfish, and sea lions. Similarly, birds don't want to miss out on the feast, swooping down from above on the sardines that surface, escaping sharks and dolphins below. Though the species that join this event end up more than satisfied after feasting like kings, the effect on the number of sardines continuing the journey is barely noticeable. So they can't afford to stop. And, speaking of food, it's impossible to swim nearly 2,000 kilometers on an empty stomach. So on this same route, the sardines need to find something to fill their modest appetites. Their roadside menu isn't particularly elaborate, but it provides what they need: a variety of plankton, crustaceans, small fish, and fish eggs. While most migratory sardines come from areas in the Agulhas Bank, where the waters are colder than at their destination, and benefit from a rise in water temperatures. Surprisingly, many additional shoals that join the migration comprise sardine populations accustomed to living in harmony in cooler waters. For them, this migration is a mystery. It is believed this could be a behavior originating in the Ice Age, a time when such a migration was well justified. By late July, these gigantic shoals make their triumphant arrival on the northern coast of South Africa and Mozambique. There, the great shoals disperse into these life-filled waters, inhabiting reefs and enjoying favorable climatic conditions. Many sardines even breed and remain here for months. Naturally, as nature's cycle must start again, by late winter and early spring, the shoals return to their point of origin. This time more spread out and at greater depths, making them nearly impossible to see at the surface. While the sardine shoals return in schools of hundreds of thousands to their starting point in the depths, there is yet another animal migrant that prefers lofty heights and traveling alone. The bar-tailed godwit is a bird that brings wild migrations to the next level. Capable of traveling up to 12,000 kilometers in a single go, the bar-tailed godwit makes the sardine migration look like a short local trip. Found in different parts of the world, these short-legged birds, weighing no more than 600 grams, perfectly represent the essence of a wild long-distance traveler. Bar-tailed godwits live in various areas of northern Eurasia and Alaska during the summer months. And when winter comes, they decide to set forth on one of the most iconic journeys in the wild. The bar-tailed godwits living in western Alaska are primarily the ones undertaking the species' longest journeys. When temperatures drop to the point that peaceful living becomes unsustainable, this bird realizes it's time to leave its comfort zone and migrate south in search of better opportunities. In an intercontinental journey, the bar-tailed godwit's destination is the lush forests of New Zealand. Located some 11,000 kilometers away, crossing the Pacific Ocean. To put that in context, it's twice the distance between Madrid and New York. Naturally, embarking on such a monumental trip calls for thorough preparation. After months of anticipating the winter and certain that freezing to death isn't on the agenda, this bird has been preparing well in advance. Leaving its habitat earlier, it travels to the Alaskan coast in search of food. But for such a long journey, the bird can't fill up on junk. It needs nutritious food that will become its fuel. The bird accumulates significant fat reserves, up to 55% of its weight, by feasting on algae and shellfish. Additionally, another adaptation this traveler undergoes to prepare for its impressive migration is the reduction of its liver, kidneys, and viscera in order to minimize weight. Clearly, the bar-tailed godwit likes to travel light. By winter's arrival, its tank is ready for one of nature's most striking journeys. With no compass other than its instinct and millions of years of evolution, this little bar-tailed godwit departs Alaska with a paradise destination in mind. Unlike the sardine shoals or the African wildebeests, the bar-tailed godwit has no option for strategic feeding stops. And in the middle of the Pacific, there aren't many spots to rest its legs, so it completes this vast distance in a single flight. One of the keys to achieving such a feat is the bar-tailed godwit's low energy consumption during flight. To cover about 60 kilometers, it uses up only 0.42% of its body weight in fat. For context, other avian species, like hummingbirds, can burn up to 2% of their body fat flying similar distances. Of course, to pull off such a long trip, the bar-tailed godwit firmly believes slow and steady wins the race. On its journey, this bird flies at an average speed of about 56 kilometers per hour, which may not be spectacular for a bird. But remember, this is a test of endurance, not speed. After about 11 days of continuous flight, with no food or sleep, and with its energy reserves nearly hitting empty, the bar-tailed godwit finally spots land. It settles in the forests of New Zealand, where it can enjoy the pleasant climate of this region so far from its home. Although staying on land, feasting, and perching on treetops may sound appealing, the bar-tailed godwit knows that nature hasn't created it for comfort on dry land. Its place in the wild is flying over endless oceans. So as soon as winter yields to spring in the northern hemisphere, it readies its body again for the journey. This time with the aim of returning to its home in Alaska in time for breeding season, which might, if all goes well, bring a new wild traveler into the world. It's possible, though unlikely, that in the course of the bar-tailed godwit's exhausting journey, from high above, it might spot another species that's also enthusiastic about major migrations. Perhaps, in those mere 2 minutes that female northern elephant seals spend at the surface between dives, the bar-tailed godwit happens to be right around the midpoint of its journey across the Pacific. The migratory adventure of female elephant seals is as astonishing as it is impactful. It all begins on the shores of California, where the elephant seals prepare for departure. The route? Over 12,000 kilometers. The destination? A spot in the middle of the North Pacific. Even on its own, the sheer distance looks daunting. However, this female elephant seal about to dive into the cold waters has one small secret. She's pregnant. Northern elephant seals only come onto land during breeding season and to give birth. And given her massive belly, it's easy to assume her mating season has passed and she's awaiting the arrival of a new family member. This proud mother-to-be must make the proper arrangements for the birth, which involve building up enough fat reserves to withstand childbirth and feed her pup. Thus, as nature demands, she has no choice but to embark on this complicated journey across thousands of kilometers to find food. Of course, the elephant seal's oceanic migration in the Pacific is anything but peaceful. This region of the world isn't exactly welcoming to a pregnant female, but Mother Nature has so ordained it. And this colossal mammal has no option other than to follow her instincts to survive. The wild predators that guard these waters feel no mercy toward a pregnant female. After all, for them it's a double meal. Orcas and fearsome great white sharks eagerly anticipate a prey as substantial as the elephant seals that dare to undertake this long journey. To avoid herself and her pup ending up in the belly of a giant white shark, the elephant seal looks to the pitch-black depths of the Pacific as a refuge. On average, she spends about 30 minutes submerged, swimming continuously to cover the longest possible distances. Though her speed, a mere 10 kilometers per hour, won't exactly make her an Olympic champion. Staying at depths of up to 1,500 meters spares her from running into voracious predators wanting a 900-kilogram feast. Despite her strong aquatic skills, after extended periods underwater, she inevitably must surface for air, putting her within the terrifying reach of predators. When she's lucky and doesn't end up on the menu of orcas or sharks, she focuses on why she ventured into the ocean in the first place: feeding. Having lost up to 40% of her weight in the breeding season, she desperately needs to regain her energy for the birth of her pup. Here, the Pacific presents a marvelous menu: fish, squid, crustaceans, and eels. Nature has given this mammal an excellent sense of sight for finding prey in these dark, calm waters, plus some very useful whiskers packed with nerve fibers that help her detect movement. After months of relentless effort, evading predators and devouring smaller marine creatures, the elephant seal has regained her weight, building up a fat reserve that will serve during childbirth, as well as for the 5 weeks of the next breeding season. The end of this initial phase in the elephant seal's migration is as mystical as her journey. It's not entirely clear when or how the mammal decides the right moment to turn around and head back to the same beach where it all started. Choosing the right place to turn back is crucial. If the seal doesn't spend enough time at sea feeding, her time on shore will become unbearable starvation. But if she extends her trip too far, she might not make it back before birth, an impossible situation for both her and her pup. Most of the time, her wild instincts are so precise that she arrives on the beach about 5 days before giving birth. There, in a remarkably fast delivery, the baby elephant seal will be welcomed by a devoted mother, with whom it will spend 4 weeks savoring the delicious milk resulting from her extensive foraging. By the 5th week, the mother goes back into heat, and the males will fight over who gets this fertile female. Once the breeding season concludes, she once again sets her eyes on the endless Pacific, and the cycle repeats, facing all the challenges of the wild that lie ahead. While northern elephant seals view the deep waters of the North Pacific as their transportation route for endless migrations, back in Africa, another species chases the rain over thousands of kilometers. And this time, it isn't the wildebeest run. The Great Nile migration of antelopes dwarfs the trek of wildebeests in the Serengeti grasslands. This is, in fact, the largest large mammal migration on Earth, numbering about 6 million migrants, including white-eared cobs, tiangs, Mongolian gazelles, and reedbucks. It's simply an unprecedented spectacle that challenges the status once held by wildebeests and their run to the Masai Mara. It all begins in the Sud wetlands, tributaries blessed by the White Nile. Here in southern Sudan, preparations for the trek commence. As with wildebeests, a migration of such colossal magnitude must proceed in a, let's say, orderly line about 80 kilometers long and 48 wide. The reason these antelopes offer the plains an endless parade lasting hours is straightforward: grass. Just like the Serengeti wildebeests, the antelopes hunt for the fresh grass planted and watered by the generous rains of the region. Wherever there is water, there they will go. This 1,000-kilometer trip ends up leading them to Gambela National Park in Ethiopia. Of course, saying it is easy. Doing it is another matter entirely. We are in Africa, a place where nature is wilder and more ruthless than anywhere else on Earth. So the countless herds of antelopes crossing the savannah come across innumerable suitors looking to feast on them. When the herd is on the move, lions usually don't even waste their time chasing prey they know they can't catch. Once they detect a predator, just switching into run mode allows the antelopes to dash up to 70 kilometers per hour, leaving the kings of the savannah empty-handed. However, as it's basically impossible to traverse such distances without making some stops to feed and stretch their legs, the antelopes occasionally halt, replenishing their energy. During these stops, the migrants have to be extra careful of where they step. Since lions' strategy is to wait patiently for the right moment. If by misfortune, some herd member falls into an ambush, it's up to that individual to figure out a way to escape, taking advantage of the chaos as thousands of antelopes scatter in every direction. Most of the time, the antelope's evasion skills outperform the lion's elaborate planning. Still, occasionally, a lioness triumphs, clutching a migrant in her jaws. A decent meal for her, though not enough to feed the entire pride, so they remain on the lookout for the feast. With inevitable losses, the path of the millions of antelopes must go on. But being in the midst of a massive migration across vast plains doesn't mean there's no time for romance. The male cobs, making up the main antelope species in the migration, with up to 5 million individuals, establish temporary mating arenas amid all the commotion. These are areas where testosterone-rich males group, waiting for females in heat. In general, these temporary arenas don't last longer than 24 hours, because the migration can't wait. The result of such encounters becomes visible about 8 months later, when pregnant females further swell the herds, replacing those lost along the way with new calves. On the other hand, it's best not to count your antelopes before they hatch, if that were a thing. On their punishing path to their destination in Ethiopia, a key barrier arises. The White Nile, a turbulent stretch of the Nile River. And if you're a giant crocodile weighing over 200 kilograms, you can't skip an event as enticing as thousands of antelopes crossing such treacherous waters. Yet the antelopes, whether oblivious to the threat of these voracious water predators, or simply accepting it bravely, plunge into the swirling currents. Every small rock that shifts or log the current drags is cause for alarm. It could be a colossal crocodile that hasn't eaten in days, waiting patiently for this moment. Many succeed in crossing, while others miscalculate and get carried off by the current, never to return to land. In seemingly safer spots, crocodiles often feast. Those that fall are effectively an offering to the White Nile for letting the rest pass. But there's no time to mourn. After crossing the only major river obstacle in this migration, the destination is at the fingertips of the survivors, and millions of antelopes arrive in Gambela, where they gorge themselves on succulent grasses in an ecosystem worthy of the effort they've made to get here. And just as these immense herds formed, wild nature sees to dissolving them slowly and guiding them back, thousands of kilometers westward to where it all began, so that once again, millions of antelopes can kick off the season of the Great Nile Migration. Despite its magnitude, the impressive feat of the antelopes crossing the southern Sudan savanna is not the largest mammalian migration on Earth. That distinction goes to as many as 10 million night travelers filling the skies over Kasanka Forest, a nature reserve within Zambia's bustling wildlife. Unlike so many other massive animal migrations on the planet, the journey of African straw-colored fruit bats begins at various points across the continent. In Zambia, they gather from places like Tanzania, Malawi, and the Democratic Republic of the Congo. All of them, of course, have faced different challenges to participate in such a wildlife spectacle of unimaginable proportions. The itinerary of the African straw-colored fruit bats starts in October. Being creatures of the night, there's no point expecting them to set off bright and early, so they start only once the sun goes down. Most of these little mammals come from the dense Congolese jungles, abandoning their caves and leafy trees to make it to an appointment they cannot miss. Many of these nocturnal watchers travel thousands of kilometers to reach their coveted forest. Their reason for undertaking such a demanding trek is none other than the enormous abundance of fruit and wildlife in the swampy Kasanka forest. whether through a sixth sense, wild instinct, or nature's call. The millions of bats leaving for this tiny region of Zambia do so always just in time to benefit from one of the forest's wettest seasons, when rain is responsible for populating the trees with fruit. Night after night, from distinct points in southern Africa, these millions of bat guests draw ever closer to the coveted forest. Unlike other flying species also engaged in magnificent migrations, fruit bats can devour whatever delicious fruit they find on their route, thus sparing themselves any fuel concerns on such a long journey. Their plan is clear: rest by day, travel by night. This rather active schedule means that even migrating, the bats can sleep up to 20 hours a day. As the first colonies start arriving in Kasanka Forest, the change in the scenery is noticeable. Spanning only 2 hectares, this small forest is about to receive millions of guests for a feast they will never forget, and that will surely convince them to return the following year. When the sun disappears from the forest and dinner is served, trees bursting with wild loquats, red legumes, and waterberries, the fruit bats attack. Having traveled so far, the bats don't just eat until they're full. In fact, each one can consume up to twice its weight daily. Thanks to Mother Nature, Kasanka Forest can supply all that food to its apparently ravenous guests. It's estimated that during the 3 months of the bats' fruit buffet, they can devour up to 330,000 tons of food. But the bats aren't the only ones eating well during these magical nights. Faced with such a dense concentration of mammals, some predators show up uninvited to the feast, either observing or occasionally sampling the spectacle. Martial eagles and African hawk eagles are perhaps as delighted as the bats with their arrival in the forest. Because with so much abundance, dinner is guaranteed. With air traffic absolutely jammed at night in this forest, the bats must be very careful not to fall to the ground. Amid the frenzy created by so much food, a collision with a tree or with each other could facilitate a meal for predators lying in wait for easy pickings. Like pythons, leopards, and crocodiles. While many are lost to these patient predators, given the sheer number of bats, the percentage of casualties is nearly insignificant. Surprisingly, the visit from these gluttonous mammals actually contributes to preserving the Kasanka Forest ecosystem, as well as the surrounding areas. By dispersing seeds and pollinating, the bats help ensure that this forest remains a true Garden of Eden on Earth, which each year offers them nearly unlimited food. By January, the last bat colonies bid farewell to their home of about 3 months. Naturally, with the promise of returning soon, the forest uses this time to recover and fill with new life for its visitors. Speaking of life, on the beaches of Florida, the miracle of life has just occurred. A tiny sea turtle, only minutes old, takes its first step straight into the sea, where it will spend a life filled with majestic global journeys. But it will never forget where it came from. Weighing just about 50 grams, the little sea turtle embarks on its first major journey. On these first steps, it's joined, at least initially, by its siblings, since its mother, whom it will never meet, laid up to 100 eggs on the beach. But challenges for this newborn are immediate. When you measure 5 or 6 centimeters, every animal around you looks like a predator. What some see as nature's miracle bringing new life, others see as a mouth-watering buffet, and crabs, birds, and fish are ready to reduce the population of baby turtles on this beach. The tide also plays its part, accepting into the sea only those who can swim strongly enough. This first baptism by fire is only a prelude to the sea turtle's great migration. A journey in which out of every 100 hatchlings, only one will reach adulthood. The turtle's first stop is the Sargasso Sea, an ecosystem offering all it needs in its initial months of life. There, among dense algal mats, it can feed and hide from the numerous predators that roam open waters. After about a year feeding and priming its body for the next stages of the journey, the turtle, now no longer so small and weighing around 2 kilograms, catches the Gulf Stream current on a lengthy trip to the Azores. At its tender age, the turtle has traveled over 3,000 kilometers, and it's only the beginning of its adventure. Even though the Azores provide a very suitable ecosystem, the majority of these turtles prefer to continue their journey to warmer waters, traveling another 1,300 kilometers to the shores of Spain. Naturally, at no point does the sea turtle return to land. It has no desire to face again the memories of its early struggles. Of course, the years have helped the sea turtle adapt to the sea's harsh conditions. And it is no longer the hatchling it once was. But when faced with some predators, like sharks and orcas, there is little it can do but retreat into its shell, hiding its head and limbs. Leading a calm lifestyle, the sea turtle also isn't known for its speed, swimming at merely 27 kilometers per hour. After a spell exploring the Iberian shores, the turtle takes advantage of the Gulf Stream, heading down Africa's western coastline, effectively adding another continent to its list. However, after years traveling around this part of the Atlantic, the turtle's migration brings her back across the ocean. It's a demanding route, yet at this point, she's prepared. Back to the pleasant waters of the Caribbean, thanks to an incredible sense of direction, wild instinct, or Mother Nature herself. The turtle finds her way to the waters where she took those first fragile steps 6 years ago. But this time, the story is different. The once tiny hatchling fighting the odds is now a mature female, seeking to do her part in preserving the species. So she'll need a male. When a female enters heat, it's a significant occasion, typically every 3 to 6 years, depending on the species. Arriving at the breeding grounds, a male will pounce on the female, and by grasping her head and neck, they begin the mating act, which can last for several hours. In breeding season, one female can mate with various males and even store sperm for months. After being fertilized, in an act brimming with wild instinct, and in one of the final chapters of its great migration, the sea turtle comes ashore onto that same beach where she once struggled for survival, swimming in the opposite direction. This time, she will not use her flippers to hurry into the sea, but rather to dig in the sand and build a nest where she can deposit up to 200 eggs. In a laying process that is anything but easy and will cause her considerable pain. Once finished, she calmly covers the hole and returns to the water's depths. It's only a matter of time for this delicate and equally enthralling cycle to restart, bringing hundreds of new hatchlings struggling for survival on the sand, in one of the wildest and most distressing beginnings of any animal migration. Just as Florida's warm beaches host such a spectacular migration, the frozen Alaskan tundra is also home to wild migrants defying distance. The caribou may be one of the most imposing migratory animal species on the planet. Standing over 2 meters tall and weighing up to 180 kilograms, caribou exceed imagination, forming huge herds that cover as much as 3,000 kilometers in their annual migration. It all starts on the Alaskan tundra at the onset of fall, when the climate slowly begins to change. The pleasant days of summer are gone, and life in this place is about to shift drastically. Even with their dense fur, letting them survive temperatures as low as -50 degrees Celsius. The scarcity of food in the impending harsh winter is something the caribou are unwilling to endure. Following nature's call, they point themselves south, where the climate will be kinder over the upcoming months. The signal for these travelers to start packing is the shortening of daylight, a clear sign that extreme conditions are coming to the Alaskan tundra. With that in mind, caribou bunch up in small groups as they prepare for their majestic march. Typically, in this surprising caravan of giant antlered creatures, the females lead, and in fact most of them aren't alone. As with elephant seals, pregnant caribou females bring the next generation, since the mating season took place only weeks prior. The males, on the other hand, come slightly behind, along with the younger ones. Although for many species, these extensive tracts of mud and early snow are impassable. Thanks to their large hooves, the caribou are in their element. On this demanding migration, it's paramount that no member of the group gets left behind. In a display impossible to ignore, there are predators as excited as the caribou about this southward journey. Gray wolves see in this migration a golden chance to feast on a hearty meal before the brutal winter, when prey becomes scarcer. Under the watchful gaze of these efficient wolf packs, caribou must stay united to avoid one traveler getting attacked from multiple angles. The key to surviving such a perilous trip is never drifting away from the caravan. Caribou also have a trick up their sleeve, or rather around their ankles, to alert each other of predators. It's a scent gland that emits a distinctive smell when one detects a looming threat. Once this odor is perceived, the herd generally knows it's time to keep moving. Still, a botched day of hunting won't deter gray wolves. The caribou migration prompts a noteworthy shift in wolf behavior. Since even though wolves aren't migratory, they can end up traveling 1,000 kilometers following the herds. They won't take no for an answer, and after relentlessly pursuing them for weeks, they're eventually rewarded with prey up to 180 kilograms for the pack. Of course, in an ecosystem as rich as Alaska, wolves aren't the only ones keen on a taste of caribou. Especially once all the wildlife knows winter scarcity is nearing. Grizzly bears are likewise interested in taking advantage of the migration to secure a substantial meal before hibernation. Returning to the subject of food, while the caribou herd pushes south, vegetation becomes more generous, supplying them with the last willow and birch leaves of the season. The remaining sedges and grasses aren't bad appetizers for caribou needing energy to press on. One of the biggest complications that might arise for extremely large migratory groups is sourcing enough food. When numerous herds merge to form gigantic groups on the march, the vegetation along the path south often cannot meet such a demand. Considering a single adult might consume up to 5 kilograms of grasses per day, enormous herds mean renting out tons of grasses to keep the migration alive. Naturally, an empty stomach won't stop the determined caribou, and even if their bellies start to rumble, they'll keep going. Once they enter their destination in the boreal forests, the herd scatters and enjoys the abundance of lichens this region offers as their home for the next 6 months. After surviving a long, yet much more bearable winter than in the north, Mother Nature hands the caribou a new mission. Returning to their breeding grounds in the north, where the females will deliver more wild travelers, and the Alaskan summer will show them a whole other vibrant side of this ecosystem. While the caribou's trek across Alaska is truly impressive, it doesn't even come close to the scale of the Arctic tern's journey. Weighing a mere 100 grams, with gray and white plumage, this bird undertakes by far the longest regular migration on the planet. Each year, following the light of day, the Arctic tern travels more than 80,000 kilometers round trip. It all starts in some part of the Arctic Circle, the same place that gives the bird its name. Seeing how the midnight sun comes to an end, the tern begins the longest journey in wildlife from north to south. Though not as rushed as the bar-tailed godwit, since the tern makes a few stopovers along its marathon route. A point in the midst of the North Atlantic is the tern's first destination. In that spot amid the infinite waters, the tern will prepare for the rest of its migration. Here, the marine wilderness offers an unprecedented abundance of prey. Small fish, crustaceans, and mollusks are on the menu. Due to the rich marine life, many other birds also turn up for lunch. If some of these diners aren't paying attention, the Arctic tern will help itself to their food. In this not at all bad place in the middle of the ocean, the tern spends up to 4 weeks gathering strength for the next stage of its journey. The tern's next stop en route southward is the Cape Verde Islands, off the northwest coast of Africa. This spot is crucial for what follows, because the tern must choose its path here. These islands represent a crossroads on its lengthy route to the bright south. Some terns prefer a relatively direct course along Africa's coastline, while others, more daring, cross the open Atlantic, continuing their journey along South America's coasts. In either case, the Arctic tern has no problem completing the trip, because millions of years of evolution have shaped it into the perfect wild migrant. Unlike the bar-tailed godwit, which may fly up to 11 days straight to reach the south, the tern goes about its journey more leisurely, and sometimes even dares to nap mid-flight, or glide with the ocean wind, thanks to its small size, thereby conserving energy. The tern's skill in navigation and wayfinding is another factor making it the ideal long-distance migrant. Its uncanny ability to reach isolated destinations with unrivaled accuracy can only be explained by a complex use of reference points, heavenly signals, and magnetic fields. On a journey this huge, where a tiny miscalculation could send it thousands of kilometers adrift, the Arctic tern is a master pilot requiring no map. Though quite aggressive in its breeding grounds, out at sea, thousands of kilometers from land, the Arctic tern has no reason to fear a predator suddenly showing up in the middle of nowhere. These are perks of a 2-month migration crossing the planet from north to south. After numerous days in flight, occasionally feeding on marine life, and having left the coasts of South America behind, the tern sees its destination in Antarctica inching closer. For it, the 1,000 kilometer stretch between Tierra del Fuego in Argentina and Antarctica's shores is akin to a stroll in the park. In just a few days, the Arctic tern reaches the finish line and arrives at what will be its home for about 4 months. The brilliant sun that greets the tern, and will remain in the white continent for months, confirms it made a wise choice in undertaking this voyage. Of course, after an enjoyable stay where the midnight sun shines continuously, the tern reminds us it isn't called the Antarctic tern, and sets off on another daunting journey back north to where everything began. This time, in addition to chasing perpetual daylight, it seeks a fertile female to mate with. thereby extending its ancient lineage of wild travelers. By the end of its 30-year lifespan, making around 60 pole-to-pole trips, the tern can clock roughly 2 million kilometers. To grasp the scope of its feat, that's the equivalent of traveling 3 times from Earth to the Moon. Although the Arctic tern's tremendous journey is by no means easy, upon returning to its actual home in the Arctic, the wild hands it countless daunting challenges. The melting of the Arctic is diminishing the tern's habitat at an unimaginable rate. Consequently, breeding season in the north becomes increasingly fraught, as terns face multiple dangers in what used to be their personal frozen oasis. Overfishing is another menace to the Arctic tern's survival. Unlike the bar-tailed godwit, the tern needs to feed during its lengthy expeditions. So those occasional fishy snacks it finds in mid-ocean are heaven-sent. Yet with large-scale fishing practiced in numerous sections of the tern's route, marine life numbers are dropping, and with no fuel in its tank, the tern cannot continue its journey. Likewise, the devastating effects of global warming are wreaking havoc on the sardine run along South Africa's coast. Since the water temperature must drop to 23 degrees Celsius for this famed migration to occur, in unusually hot years, the sardines don't undertake their colossal marine exodus. The last sardine run that didn't happen was in 2006, when the waters never got cool enough for these fish to move north. Similarly to the Arctic tern's case, extensive fishing significantly reduces the number of these determined swimmers each year. As large fishing boats gather in hopes of hauling them up from the depths. Far from South Africa's still lively waters, yet still in deep seas off California, the northern elephant seals know all too well the risk of near extinction. Once hunted for their oil almost to the point of no return, they are no longer at such critical levels but still battle a race against time. With diminishing food sources and ever more plastic in their waters, and with a migration that ends in childbirth, going without enough food isn't an option. Up in northern Alaska, the caribou migration also faces its own challenges caused by human activities. Exploiting the vast natural resources of this region is shrinking what was once a seemingly endless habitat. Widespread logging and oil extraction are stripping away the lichen-filled forests that are vital for these herds to survive the brutal winter. Coupled with global warming, some herds can't endure the ensuing famine and end up collapsing, which means ever fewer caribou undertaking the migration. A similar scenario is unfolding with the Great Serengeti migration, in which wildebeests increasingly encounter barriers in their unending trek across the grasslands. With shorter rainy seasons due to rising temperatures, the savanna no longer turns as green as it used to. As a result, fewer individuals join the migration cycle, affecting all wildlife in southern Africa. Though the outlook seems bleak in many cases, efforts are underway on multiple fronts to protect these majestic migratory species. For instance, areas like Kenya's Masai Mara have been declared protected reserves, encouraging the conservation of animals such as wildebeests, antelopes, zebras, and other endangered species. Kasanka National Park is another testament to what coordinated efforts to protect an ecosystem can achieve, thus ensuring the great bat migration to this forest. Every year, this remarkable natural event draws thousands of tourists from all over the world who come to witness a one-of-a-kind spectacle, generating significant income for the region. A parallel example is the monarch butterfly sanctuaries in the state of Michoacán, Mexico. designated by UNESCO as a World Heritage Site, a symbol of monarch preservation, and a commitment to keeping these forests evergreen for the butterfly's arrival. Regarding solitary migratory species such as the bar-tailed godwit or the Arctic tern, ongoing research on their behavior and habitats aims to deepen our knowledge of their journeys, so we can foster green roots and raise awareness of these remarkable feats. These grand animal migrations are a natural spectacle that unites us all. Every bird that flies thousands of kilometers and every turtle that crosses oceans reminds us that we are part of an interconnected planet. Let's protect their roots, preserve their habitats, and ensure a future in which wildlife can continue to migrate freely. If these stories of the great wild travelers have amazed you, remember to give us a thumbs up. Likewise, if you want to help spread the majesty of these species and their treks, feel free to share this video with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel to keep enjoying more stories filled with wild animals and their colossal feats. Until next time.